Hello YouTubers and TikTokers alike, I am Kyle and this is my review of It Chapter 2.
Something happens to you when you leave this town. The farther away, the hazier it all gets. But me, I never left. I remember all of it.
Just as a heads up so you know, there will be no spoilers in this video until Pennywise over here turns into black and white. So when you see the red fade away and it's all black and white, you will know that we're talking about spoilers. Until then, we're just gonna keep everything non-spoiler and I'm just gonna tell you what I thought about the film. Stephen King's It has been a story that I have loved since I was a kid. I grew up watching the Tim Curry version, and when Chapter 1 came out, I was completely blown away by how a true adaptation of the book looked on the silver screen. I was just floored by it. I had some things that I was not too crazy about, but they were minute, and I was really excited to see where Chapter 2 was going to take us, and then ultimately leading to the final showdown of the entire film. This movie truly is a continuation. It's not a sequel. It's a continuation of the story that we have started with part 1. And for those of us that have read the book, we know how the back and forth between the kids and the adults work. And it's really cool to see the way that they save the adults for part 2. And I gotta say, everybody in this film was casted so well. People have been talking about how they thought that Bill was kind of a weak link with James McAvoy, that he basically worked with what he had. I completely disagree. I thought that he was really fantastic. And everybody from Jessica Chastain to Mustafa, which I love that name. It's like Mufasa, so it's cool to see like that kind of name. But everybody in this film did fantastic. These characters just come to life. It's like they genuinely felt like they were the kids grown up, and it was so awesome to see that. And without a doubt, Bill Hader is in fact the king of this movie. He made me sob. Like, no joke, I actually was crying when I watched this movie. It was breathtaking to see the story finish out the way that it did, and I could not be happier. I've also heard people talk about the fact that they felt like the ending didn't land. There's a consistent joke throughout the film of them talking about Bill Denbrough not able to write a good ending. Like, even his wife was like, look, like, your book endings, they're not good. Your stories are good, but your endings aren't. And there's even a cameo in the film, which I will talk about in the spoiler section, that was really cool to see, that person was like, yeah, like, your ending sucks. So that was really cool. Bill Skarsgård knocked it out of the park as usual. It was so cool just to see him come back, and he really wasn't on screen for a long time. And I'm sorry, but it didn't bother me. People have been talking about that, how they were like, well, it's like we came here to see Pennywise, and it's to an effect, yes, that is the case. However, Pennywise himself, he is not Pennywise. He's a shapeshifter. That's the whole way how he attracts in those around him to eat them. So that's something that you have to remember, where it's like, yeah, he may have only had about 10 minutes of screen time throughout this entire film, but that's because it's what needed to happen. When he did show up, which was especially the third act of the film, oh boy, they gave me a gift. I was so happy with that, but I'll talk about that in the spoiler section. This film was amazing. Me and my mom and my younger brother and my older brother went and saw this film with a bunch of friends, and we were all a mess when we came out. Like, I mean, just because we were happy to see how it all ended, but also because of the plot of where things ended up. And if you've read the book, you pretty much know where everything, ends up, and how all these characters, come out the other side or don't. And that's something that is really just, it was so well done. It was like, I have never thought that I would think that a two-parter like this would be able to continue the way that it did seamlessly. in a way that was going to be a true reflection of the subject material, and then also be able to give a new vision for what they wanted to do with this film. Because to be very frank, the book is so out there, especially when you get into the turtle and you get into everything that has built this universe and how everything goes with it. It's so interesting to me to see that Andy Muschietti had the balls enough to be like, you know what, no, we're not doing that. We're gonna stay to the fact that Pennywise's origin is pretty much the same as far as his age, but we're not going to get into the turtle. There's no point to. They gave a lot of nods to it. There was a lot of cameos as far as like objects are concerned. You know, like in the first film when they find the turtle in the quarry, and then also whenever you have the turtle that's in Georgie's room. So they did a lot of things like that, and it was cool to see that they paid homage to that. So definitely bonus points for them for that. But in my opinion, there was no reason to go with that. There was no reason to have the turtle, because it's such an outlandish thing. Like, even Stephen King himself has said that he was on drugs when he wrote the book. So there's a lot of things that, you know, he just unlocked with, you know, his mind being in that state. I can't remember what drugs he said he was on, but it clearly made him come up with some crazy things for the book. People have been talking about the CGI with the kids, and it is very distracting. I won't lie. That's actually one of the cons of this film, especially being somebody that does filmmaking and has done VFX. I'm somebody that is a Nazi when it comes to that. I try my best to make sure that effects are seamless and the way that they should be. This film, I felt like they could have done a lot more practically. There's a lot of things that come down, like especially with the fortune cookie scene, and when you have different things that the losers are interacting with, it's like, man, it's like you could have done that practically. And like, it didn't make me hate the film, but there was still a lot of things where I was just like, man, like, I'm a sucker for practical effects. It's one of the reasons why Evil Dead was such a great remake, because they did everything practically. And I know that it's not, funnily enough, it's not practical to always do everything practically. But yeah, I mean, regardless, the subject matter of those CG things was still very scary. And it was really cool to see how things evolved for this new story. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move into spoiler territory. So we're gonna go ahead and change this over. So if you don't wanna know anything about it, Chapter 2, get out of here. We're talking about spoilers. First and foremost, I just want to say the fact that the spider at the end of the film looked amazing. I was so happy to see that that's like, this is where we ended up, because if you've seen the original, you know how crappy the spider looked, and it's like, it wasn't terrifying anymore. It's like, yeah, I was ashamed to see that Tim Curry was attached to that. Everything with Tim Curry up until that point was awesome, and after that, no, it's not good. So that, yeah, the spider was awesome, and I loved how the final battle really was not even really about the spider. It was really about each person going through their own version of hell with the Ritual of Chud. Like, that's something from the book that is so out there, but they still kept that aspect of the story. It was really cool to see that. Everybody's reunion throughout, like, the, you know, the Chinese food restaurant scene where, you know, Bill Hader and, or sorry, not Bill Hader, Richie and Eddie are just screaming at each other. More so, Eddie is like so angry. Ben, oh my God, I loved him in this film. It was so cool to see the interaction between him and Bev when he just looked at her and he was just like, hey, is there a password? And you know, if you may miss that if you don't remember the first one. So it's really awesome to see that these characters work together really well. Mike, people have been saying that Mike was exposition, like that's all that he did, but like, what else was his job? Like, that's his whole point. He stayed behind in Derry, and you know, he was the one that called everybody back, and that was his job, to be sure that everybody knew about it. And ultimately, he was the one that helped them defeat Pennywise in the end by, you know, diminishing him down. It's like they called out and spoke into, you know, into the universe, like what he really was to them. They weren't afraid of him anymore. It was great to see that they killed him in the exact same way they killed him in the miniseries, but it was done so much better. Had the miniseries done what that ending did, it could have been very, very cool. But I'm really happy to see that this film ended up the way that it did. It was so cool. It was so awesome to see that. The Paul Bunyan statue was something that I was really happy that they kept in there, that it was actually young Richie. It wasn't old Richie like it was in the book. It was cool to see, you know, Bev's arc and how she came through everything. And it was, you know, and that's also another thing, kind of a nitpick I have with Beverly, was that the old woman thing, it basically was just mama. And I wasn't a fan of that. I was like, man, dude, like, you could have done something great. I think it would have just been scarier having a old, you know, naked woman running at her instead of this old naked woman that was this giant CGI monster that looked like mama. You know, it's like, that's any Machete, I mean, whatever, but I wasn't a fan of that. But once again, not anything that made me hate the film. The beginning of the film where you had the hate crime against the gay couple, that was so cool to see how well that was taken from the book. Like, literally the way that Pennywise bit Adrian, like, on the armpit, that's exactly how Stephen King described it. It was so awesome to see that. Speaking of Stephen King had a cameo in this film, and I love the fact that he told Bill that his endings sucked. It was so cool to see that, because, like, even Stephen King is like, yeah, my endings haven't always been, you know, strong. So it's cool to see that he had a sense of humor about that, and, like, you know, Bill paid $300 for Silver, and, like, Silver was great. The funhouse scene was just so intense, and then the way that they, you know, completely delivered on that climax, it was fantastic. Oh my God, I'm hope I don't want to get emotional again, but Stan and Eddie, those two guys, like, we knew that Stan died, but what I loved about Stan's arc was that he sent letters to everybody at the end of the film, or he had sent them before he had passed away, or killed himself rather, and it was basically him saying that he knew he was too afraid and that they would lose because of that. So he took himself out of the equation. I felt like that was such a great thing. That gave his death a little bit more than he was just a coward. Like, he actually had a meaning behind that. And Eddie, I don't think I've cried that hard over a character, but disregarding Marvel, but like I was, oh my God, Bill Hader's just reaction to that of, like, I can't leave him behind, like, he's still down there. And it was just, oh my God, like, I was so emotional over that, and that led into them alluding to the fact that Richie was gay, because, like, that he actually cared about Eddie, like, he loved him, and, you know, it made so much sense as to why he treated him the way that he did, and I had no problem with it at all. I thought it was a great thing. Andy Muschietti did something really special here, and I absolutely love this film. I think, in my opinion, the execution was perfect. CGI was definitely an issue, but this movie was amazing. It's a flawed film, but the thing is that I think that the execution was definitely something that was amazing, and I am so happy to say that I got to experience it on opening night. Actually, the night before opening night, the theater that we have here locally shows it the day prior, so that's what we did with Endgame when we saw that. But it was so damn good. I am so happy about this film. I cannot wait to watch it again, and it's so great. I would go see this movie every single day if I could, if it wasn't 3 hours long. And that's the other thing too. People have been talking about that, you know, with it being 3 hours, that they felt like it dragged, or that they felt like, God, like, when's this going to be over? I didn't get that way. Like, I knew that it was a long movie, but I didn't care. I have wanted to see these characters again so much. I love these characters. This is a movie that I live for. I want this story to be shown properly. And if it's ever remade again, I don't ever want that to happen. I want it to stay like this. I think that it's perfect the way that it should be. So, but with that being said, I think that's pretty much all I can say about this film. If I think of anything later, then I'll probably make another video about it. But other than that, I absolutely love this film. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you've stuck around this long, and let me know what you thought about this film. Keep the comments below spoiler free. And if you do some spoilers, if you do some spoilers, then please give a warning, and then, you know, like, make it hidden. That way people can, you know, not see what these spoilers are, because you don't want to spoil this film for anybody. This is a film that you need to see, you know, in its entirety. So with that being said, I can't wait to buy it on Blu-ray. I will definitely own this film. I loved it. I'm so happy that it ended the way that it did. They gave us a spider that was definitely worth it. That is my Pennywise right there. So with that being said, thanks for watching my review, guys, and like, comment, subscribe. That way you never miss an upload. Adios.